Hello and welcome to Syndicate Gaming. My name is Jim, and today we're talking about the Inhumans. We got the panel to play for Maximus and King Black Bolt, which is really exciting. The Inhumans have needed a boost for a good while now. They were one of the earliest affiliations to come out, and they've only gotten a couple characters here and there. They have a couple characters that aren't actually Inhumans get added in. They got Miss Marvel, but that was a couple years ago, so they really need the boost here. The pack also comes with Gorgon and Karnak, who we have not seen yet, but I'll be making a video on them once that comes out, probably next week sometime. But yeah, let's just jump straight into it. First, let's talk models. So they're featuring King Black Bolt here. I mean, he looks pretty good. I'm not gonna complain about him. I just I'm not sure what this like energy is, right? Because it's not coming from his mouth, which is his whole thing. But I mean, it looks good. It looks more imposing than the classic Black Bolt, and this one is a threat higher, so I think it matches. It's kind of the same thing they did for Thor, right? It's like the first model is like a really classic pose, then the second one is like juiced up energy around flying through the air. So yeah, I like it. Um, I don't know if I'll do my energy blue or not. I might make it more white. Then maybe it looks too much like lightning. But yeah, I don't know. I like the model. And then Maximus is, pretty classic in his cloak and he's got the little smoke around him. He's the trickster. He's falsifying images and stuff like that. So I like how they're facing off, because they're brothers. Maximus is always trying to usurp the throne, all that. I actually know a decent amount about the Inhumans because I read the entire Inhumans versus X-Men comic run. That's one of the few comics I've actually read in full. So, yeah, pretty cool story. I'll have more to say about that with King Black Bolt later, but Maximus specifically, I believe in that story, hopefully I'm not wrong, but he was imprisoned in Karnak's like mental maze kind of thing, like some other dimension, which is kind of cool, but he didn't have a huge role in that story. It was very much um Medusa and Black Bolt were in charge, so mostly Medusa, which we will touch on later. Because there are also some tactics cards besides just Maximus and Black Bolt. There's three new cards here, which all these are very interesting. But yeah, um, let's jump into it. Let's start with Maximus. He's the first thing in the article, and I think he's really interesting. Um, so here he is, Maximus the Mad, Maximus Boltagon. I never really thought about his last name also being Boltagon because clearly the name was made for Black Bolt because he's Blackagar Boltagon, and then Maximus also needs Boltagon, right? So I don't know. I just think it's kind of funny to me. But anyways, he has 2 physical defense, 3 energy, and 5 mystic. So that immediately makes me think he's like a mystic mental powerhouse here. It's kind of like what we saw with Charles, like Ebony Maw, stuff like that. He has 6 health, which is really nice. He's a 4 threat, which seems about right, what I would have thought for him. Size 2, medium move. He's on a small base, so just kind of classic human stats there. Well, I guess he's an inhuman. All right, his first attack is Brain Freeze. Range 4, strength 5, 0 power. It's a builder, so he gains power equal to damage dealt. And Wild Suppressive, so after the attack is resolved, the target character loses a power for each wild in the attack roll. Okay, we literally just saw this on Gladiator. He also has suppressive on his builder, so I guess they're going to be leaning more into that, which is kind of cool. It's been on like Cyclops, Psylocke, Colossus has a version of this, so you know, you never plan on it, but it's nice when it goes off. And as we'll see, he has a bunch of rerolls, so he might be rolling into some wilds. All right, and then we have his spender, also Mystic, Neuro Annihilation, range 3, 9 dice, 5 power. The defending character cannot add additional dice to its defense roll or modify its defense dice. And then a wild stagger. If you roll a wild, they get staggered if they're not dazed or KO'd. So, I think this is pretty good. it feels like a power dump kind of thing. Like maybe if Maximus gets dazed and then wakes up the next round, he has a bunch of power that he can dump into somebody to punish them, right? Um, Worth noting when it says cannot add additional dice, that includes criticals. That's not just like Cable throwing up a shield or whatever. Um, like if they roll a crit, they do not roll in an extra die, and they can't modify either. So it's pretty consistent to deal some damage here. Range 3 is kind of close for what I think he's clearly intended to be a ranged character. But yeah, I think it's good if you need to deal that damage. He has other ways to spend power, but if you gotta just put somebody down, this will do it. Let's skip the leadership for now. Talk about the rest of his card. I like to focus on the leaderships on their own, and it's turned out to be quite controversial, so I want to spend some time on that. All right, he has an active superpower. Did you forget why you're here? 2 power. Choose a character within range 3 with an activated token. Advance that character short. The superpower can be used only once per turn. All right, so just right off the bat, this is worse than stuff like, you know, Ultron or classic MODOK, or there's a newer character that just had it. Maybe it was just Ultron. But anyways, those characters just pay 2 power and move somebody. Maximus, they have to be activated, which really makes me think you want to go later with him, right? So like if you activate Maximus first in the round, no one else is going to have an activated token, right? So you can't move them. So like, just right there, that would be a reason to use your spender. If you're activating him first, you can't use did you forget why you're here? Because nobody's activated. So you're going to spend your power on the spender, right? So I think that actually works pretty well. Also, one more thing about this, it can move allies, which is really, really good. I just compared it to Ultron and MODOK. This moves allies. Those cannot move allies. So if you go really late in the round with Maximus and the enemy, Thanos or whoever it may be, moved everyone on the board, Maximus can help offset some of that, which is really nice. He can obviously never do it on himself because he can't use this while he's activated. But yeah, I think this is a great ability. Um, if you can use it, you should use it, right? It's like if you have 2 power and somebody is in range, just use it. I mean, I've had games where just randomly moving somebody has like completely changed the game. Like I literally just moved them from one side of the point to the other, and that ended up having a huge impact. So like use this. But he has a reactive power. So, there is some consideration here because he can do stuff during the opponent's turn. So maybe you don't actually want to dump all your power. It's madness, my favorite kind. 2 power. When an enemy character within range 3 of this character makes an attack during the modified dice step, this character may use this superpower. This character rerolls 2 of the attacking character's dice. Okay. This this is really, really good. Like we've seen this on Crimson Dynamo. I couldn't think of his name for a second. Crimson Dynamo has a very similar thing, and he's turned out to be very, very good. And Maximus is even better because if we look at Crimson Dynamo, um, give me one second. He has to use his when your ally is targeted, right? Maximus uses his after you see all the dice rolls. So you're not wasting your power, right? So like there are games with Crimson Dynamo where he fires off the ability when his ally is targeted, and then it ends up not mattering. That will not be the case for Maximus. He'll never waste that power, which is really, really, really good. Like I cannot emphasize how good that is. Having perfect knowledge, because the last thing you do is modify your own defense dice. Well, then I guess the opponent can modify your dice, like if they have a pierce or something. But it's pretty rare. There's stuff after this. So yeah, great superpower. I really like both of his superpowers. And then he has the innate Inhuman that all of the Inhumans have. he can reroll one die in his attack or defense rolls, which, I mean, super good. Like, any kind of inbuilt reroll is just fantastic. Like, it just makes you more consistent. It makes these defenses just straight up better. It's almost like an extra die, right? And it's almost like an extra die in his attacks. Not quite, but close. And then he cannot be poisoned like the rest of the Inhumans. So like, that's just randomly really good against like Abomination, Hydra, Baron Strucker, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, just randomly dunk on people with that. So as a character, I really like Maximus. He's obviously fragile. He's weak to physical, right? Like if you throw stuff into him, he's taking damage. He wants to play at range, right? He wants to do some control. But his inbuilt reroll combined with his reroll the other player's dice stuff actually makes him pretty survivable. But none of that matters against throws, right? So just like do not let the enemy throw stuff at you. And I was looking through the Inhumans, and most of the Inhumans have a throw. So I think if you're gonna play Maximus, like you try and throw the terrain first before they can throw it at your Maximus. Especially if he is the leader, which we're gonna go into now, because um, okay, so let's just read it and then I'll explain a little bit more. So leadership. Call me Maximus the Magnificent. Obviously, it's for the Inhumans. Here's what it says. The first time each turn an allied character attacks or defends during the modified dice step, it must use this leadership. Reroll one of its attack or defense dice. If the rerolled result is a skull, after the attack is resolved, your opponent places the allied character within range 1 of its current position, and this character gains 1 power. Okay, so let me just break down exactly what it does before we get into it. So I just clarified on Discord. The first time each turn an allied character attacks or defends means you only get 1 reroll a turn. So like if the enemy Cable attacks Maximus, he'll get the reroll. And then if Cable attacks Black Bolt will not get the reroll because it's once the first time each turn. It does not say the first time each turn for each character. So that's how we're reading it for now. This could change in the future when he comes out, if they publish like an FAQ or something. But that's how we're going to operate with it right now. And okay, so let's say Maximus gets attacked. You have to use the leadership. Reroll one of your dice. If you roll into a skull, the opponent places you, and Maximus gets 1 power. Like Maximus always gets the power. It can be a little bit confusing, but if you get placed, Maximus gains a power, not whoever is doing the defending, right? So I've seen a lot of stuff online, and in my game chat, with my brother and my friend, and a lot of people do not think this is very good because if you roll that skull, you get placed, right? And that's can be really bad. And yes, that can be very bad. Like any kind of movement on you is not good. But on the flip side, you're getting so many free rerolls, and it's only a 1 in 8 chance that you actually get placed because the die that is rerolled has to be a skull. It's not if you have a skull in the entire roll. It's that one die that you reroll needs to land on a failure. So that is a 1 in 8 chance, right? And which, it will happen probably. It's really hard to say, but it might happen 2 or 3 times a game where you get placed. And that could be devastating and like lose you the game, or it could literally not matter, you know? So, and I think there's some ways to play around this where it doesn't matter. So for instance, it happens when you attack, right? So let's say if I'm going with my Black Bolt, the new Black Bolt, who we're going to talk about, but he has hit and run, right? So his first attack, he fires it off. He gets the free reroll. If you happen to roll into the skull, okay, he gets placed 1. Maximus gets a power. And then Black Bolt still has his second action to hit and run and move back where he wants, right? Or, who else is in Inhuman? Lockjaw can teleport somebody back to the point. Quicksilver can move himself back. Medusa can place herself off of others, right? Miss Marvel could transform to get that range 1 back. Like, it's not ideal, but it's not the end of the world. I think the worst possible situation is if you're defending, right, and you get attacked and you reroll into that skull and you get placed off of a point and the character has already activated, so they can't get back on the point, right? And I think that is where Maximus comes in with the move an ally is activated, right? Like maybe it's a little bit too much to get it to all work correctly, but like you have ways around it, and there's stuff like Warpath is now in the game. So if you're really worried about it, you could play Warpath to get back onto that point, right? Like if you take a damage, you get to move towards the enemy. And there's also just the factor of the opponent is placing you, and they could mess up and actually place you somewhere that's beneficial to you, right? Because when you measure in Marvel Crisis Protocol, if you're placing range 1, you've got to put down the range 1 ruler, and you can't also measure another range. So like so for instance, if they place my Black Bolt range 1, they can't also measure range 4, which is his range. So like Black Bolt could still be in range, like he might be off the point, but he's still in range to hit and run back onto the point, right? So like they don't get perfect measurement knowledge with this. Like, and I mentioned it could be catastrophic, like it's the last attack of a round, you get moved off of a point and you lose a victory point. Like that is the worst possible situation. But remember, it's only a 1 in 8 chance to get moved. So like maybe the highest top end players will hate that they can just randomly get trolled by a dice roll. And I totally get that, but I think in just a normal game of MCP, this is going to be way more beneficial to you than negative. Because I've also seen people say like, oh, if I roll 5 dice on the attack and I roll 5 hits, I have to re-roll 1. And it's like, okay, yeah. So you have to re-roll 1 with the leadership. Let's say you whiff on that. Guess what? You also have an inbuilt Inhuman reroll to then re-roll that again. So if that's something that you're really worried about or seems like a negative, don't be. Because it's like if you roll 5 successes on 5 dice and you re-roll it with the leadership, whiff, re-roll with Inhuman, still whiff, you're still hitting 4 times. Like that's still really good. You just had some bad luck. Like it's just so much dice consistency. Like Maximus messes with the dice math so hard, right? Because it's like all your characters now have 2 rerolls, because most of them are going to be the Inhumans. And then with this, 2 rerolls on every attack is insane. I mean, we've seen that with Baron Zemo and Namor and all that. It's so good. And then also on defense, right? So like Maximus, he has 2 physical defense, which is really bad, but he gets 2 rerolls on that first attack, right? So it's basically just free successes and you randomly get trolled and you need to be ready to counteract the trolling, right? And I think it's why Maximus gets a power so he can move people back that have been activated. I think that's the idea, because the worst case is you're activated and you get moved because your character can't then move. Like I said, you have Medusa can move an allied character back on, outside of their turn. Lockjaw could move them outside of their turn. There's a bunch of characters that can do it. So I like to compare Maximus to Emma Frost, right? Let me pull up Emma, because they're mystic powerhouses. really bad defense, and Emma has obviously been really, really good, right? It's mostly her leadership, but I seriously think this leadership is really good because of all the extra dice you get. And if you can work your way around that skull thing, it's all upside. Like Emma literally has the same defenses. Like, yeah, she can go diamond form. How do I go diamond form? Here we go. You know, she can go diamond form to get a little bit more tanky, but it's pretty universally agreed that you do not want to go diamond form unless you absolutely have to. So like you might as well not even factor that in, right? And Emma's obviously seen really good play. They're not exactly the same characters, but I like to compare them. And I think the more people play Maximus, the better he's going to feel, which is really cool to me, right? And again, this is another leadership that is kind of selfish because it gives Maximus power. We just saw it on like Loki, right? Claw. I love these villain leaderships that are a little selfish because it feels more thematic, right? It's like, Maximus is the leader right now. The other Inhumans are not totally on board, but they still follow him, right? I think that's so cool. All right. I've spent wow, I've spent a long time talking about Maximus already. But hey, that's just how I roll here. So yeah, I think Maximus is great. I really want to try him out some more. And he has one tactics card we're going to talk about. Oh, worth mentioning he's exactly the same on the other side. All right. Now, let's talk King Black Bolt. Uh Obviously we had the first incarnation of Black Bolt. He was a leader. He was a 5 threat, right? Um Phenomenal leadership, has a bodyguard, range 4, 6 dice, pierce. Like he's basically like he he's like mostly his leadership that also has some interesting tools like the bodyguard thing, and when he gets injured, he, goes insane and gains a spender and all that. The 6 threat Black Bolt is pretty different. And just right off the bat, look how much text is on here. Like he has so many abilities, right? Like just just right off the bat, the more text you have, the better you probably are. All right. So King Black Bolt, Blackagar Boltagon. He's 4s across the board in defense, 7 stamina, 6 threat, size 2, medium move. It looks like he's on a medium base. Yeah, he's on a larger base. So he's a little fast. And, he has flight, obviously. Because it's Black Bolt. He flies. So, there are people that don't like it, but but I talk about all the time that 6 threats are kind of a concerning area for MCP, right? Like they tend to be very strong. So let's see if King Black Bolt is. So Sonic Blast is an energy attack. Beam 4, Strength 5. Once the attack is resolved, he gains a power. And a Wild Push, after the attack is resolved, if the target is size 3 or less, push them away short. Well, you may push them. You don't have to push them. So yeah, wow. Just right off the bat, a Beam 4 for your basic attack is really, really good. And man, just and then it could potentially push multiple characters with one attack, right? So Beam 4 is really far. You have a guaranteed amount of power. Yeah. So if you hit 3 enemy characters, you're getting 3 power, which is just really strong. And then potentially also pushing them when, spoilers, we have an inbuilt reroll, right? He's in Inhuman, which, everyone has. So you get a reroll on every single one of these beam attacks. You might get a reroll from Maximus on the first roll. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Just on the first one. not on every beam attack. I got worried for a second that it was on all of them, but it's not. So yeah, it being 5 dice is a little bit concerning, but we'll see later. It can get bumped up. Um, so now his spender attack, Wrath of the Midnight King, range 3, 8 dice, 4 power. Once the attack is resolved, he advances medium. Okay, really good. You love to see that. Any attack that gives you a guaranteed move is just really, really good because it's basically just a free attack. It's like I want to move anyways. I might as well do this to also make an 8 dice attack. And then a wild throw. So before damage is dealt, you throw the target character short. So that's any size, any direction, which is the best possible combination, right? Like he can throw a sentinel, a size 5 sentinel. He can throw a Dormammu, but it fits. Like Black Bolt is insanely strong. Like this dude, if he wants to, he could like end the planet, right? So yeah, I think it makes sense. It's just really, really good. So let's look at his first active superpower called Increase the Volume. 3 power. During the next attack action made by this character this turn, add 2 dice to the attack rolls. So what that means is you can bump up all of these beam attacks to make it 7 dice, which is crazy. So a beam for 7 dice is very, very good. And if you're hitting 3 enemy characters, at least 3 enemy characters, you're getting all that power back, right? Because you get a guaranteed 1 power. So it's basically just free dice. And it's not limited to once per turn. So if you then follow up with another Sonic Blast, you can do it again, right? Like you can pump up the volume. So you could hit 3 enemy characters with 2 strength 7 attacks pretty easily. And then on the second one you can push them wherever you want, like off of all the points or whatever. Just really, really good. Like this is obviously just better than if the beam was like 3 powers, 7 dice, because you just have the option, right? It's like if you want to pump out the damage or try and get the push, it's there. So then he has hit and run. So 2 power action. He makes an attack followed by a move. I mean, that's just really good, right? It's not as good as charge or like throwing yourself, but it's still really good. Action compression. It's like what I was saying with Maximus, like if he gets off of a point or gets thrown, he can still attack and move back, which is really good. This also lets you line up that second beam. That's really good because the first one you can do Sonic Blast, right? If you push some people around, you then move into position to hit them again, even though you pushed them, which is just phenomenal. So really, really good. Then he has Telepathic Command, 2 power. Choose another allied character within range 4. That character advances short. This superpower can be used only once per turn. Yeah, okay, so this is what I was thinking when I couldn't think of the newest character with this ability. It's Black Bolt. It's the next character. But like I said, it's just like Maximus that he can move allies, right? Like this right here is the best possible version of this superpower, right? Like it's strictly better than Maximus is. It's better than Ultron, better than MODOK. Because allies, enemies, like on an enemy, move them off of a point, move them into this fat beam you're throwing, move them into you, move them out of a gamma wave. Like there's so much you could do. And then moving an ally is obviously just so strong. Like if you get trolled by Maximus, yeah, move them back on. So like if we're playing a Maximus team and you get moved off the point, Maximus or Black Bolt can move them back. Just right there. And then if you put in Medusa, I've said this a few times now, but like we have ways around it. This is just an insane superpower. And if you beam 2 characters, you're guaranteed to have this, right? So like you should do this every single turn. Ally, enemy, whoever. He has the inbuilt Inhuman reroll. Okay, that works on every beam. all of his defense. So 4 is in defense with a reroll is just so good. Anti-graviton control. When this character would suffer damage, reduce the amount suffered by 1 to a minimum of 1. Also, he gains an extra power in the power phase. So the extra power thing is pretty standard for 6 threats. Do all of the 6 threats get extra power? I think so. Probably. But yeah, it turns on hit and run, guaranteed every turn. Turns on telepathic command. You only need 1 more to increase the volume. Like, yeah, really good. And then obviously, -1 damage really amps up these defenses. So 4 is in defense, reroll, damage reduction, 7 stamina. He's 8 stamina on the back. Like, this dude's hard to put down, right? Like, throwing into him is probably the best thing to do. Pretty cool. And then he has a superpower called Inhuman King. It's an innate. At the start of the activation phase, you may choose 1 allied character with the Inhuman superpower. The chosen character removes a special condition. Okay, I have a lot to say about this actually, because this is the first time, as far as I'm aware, that on a character card, it references a specific type of character. Does that make sense? Like, we've never seen something that's like, pick an Inhuman and do something. Never seen that, I think, as far as I know. Like, this is a new design space, and I would love if they did more of this. Because, like, you know, this incentivizes him to be in an Inhuman squad. It also works on himself, so if he starts the activation phase staggered, he can remove it and then activate fully, right? Which is really good. Like, and you're probably gonna have priority because you have a 6 threat, right? So I love this. I think it's really strong. It's just like free value on himself. And if you're with the correct people, it's even more value. Yeah, I want to see more stuff like this that specifically affects certain things. Like if the new Thor had a thing that was like pick an Asgard model, throw yourself towards them or something like that. I don't know. I'm just making stuff up here. But I think that is a really good tool to like rein in some of the 6 threat power while still making them powerful. And then he has flight and can't be poisoned. Pretty obvious for the Inhuman King. So, um, when I first saw that they were doing King Black Bolt and he wasn't a leader, I was like, that doesn't make any sense, right? Like he's the king, he should be a leader. But we're about to see there's a card for Medusa that gives her leadership, and that's actually super thematic because in the comic book run I read, yeah, the king was Black Bolt, but Medusa was in charge. She was the one calling the shots. So I think it actually fits the more I think about it. And it lets you use Maximus and Medusa, right? And that's the big thing with this King Black Bolt. Is like you want to think like, okay, how can I use the Inhumans leadership to move power to Black Bolt to set him off? But you can't because you can't have both Black Bolts, right? So I think this Black Bolt is very strong. I've I've seen people online say that he's not great, but I do not see that at all. Right? He has so much going on. Like there's so much here. He has control, offense, tankiness, um, moves allies. Like, yeah, he just kind of does a little bit of everything. Like maybe he's not gonna like wreck the world, but boy, he is a solid all rounder that I kind of like. It's like round one. Well, I guess round one he could do some stuff. Well, you don't get the power shenanigans from Black Bolt though, right? So maybe he doesn't do as much round one, which is kind of nice, but he could move up and hit and run. Like if an enemy gets into range 4, he can also double move to a point and move an enemy off of it to take it. Which, if you watch the Cabal tier list video, I talked about how Enchantress was the only character in the game that could do that consistently round one. Well, now we have King Black Bolt can do that. So basically a guaranteed point round one, which is really cool. Yep, I think he's really good. I don't know if he's like broken OP, but he's solid, especially in the Inhumans, especially under Maximus and under Medusa. So let's jump into the tactics cards here. All these are so cool. This one is called Inhuman Queen. So basically, it's for the Inhumans. It says when you would normally pick an active leadership, if your squad is Inhumans affiliated and has Medusa, Medusa plays the card and gets the leadership. So we're going to end up with 3 leaders here, which is really cool. So it's called Queen of the Inhumans for the Inhumans. Once per turn, when an allied character dazes or KOs an enemy character, it may gain 1 power, remove a damage, and advance short. Wow, that 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 is really good. Like that is basically Malekith. Um, like I pulled up Malekith just to compare, and if y'all have played with Malekith, this is an absurd leadership. Malekith moves somebody else, right? I guess it can do multiple people a turn, so it's not quite as strong. But yeah, like on somebody like this King Black Bolt who just does so much damage and can hit whoever he wants, right? With the range and the hit and run and moving them, and then he just benefits off of it. I was gonna say that this is another way to counteract the Maximus plays, but you don't get both leaderships, right? You would be Medusa or Maximus. So the biggest downside to this is that it takes up a tactics card, which is obviously rough. But I think this one might be worth it. Like, she herself is such a good character, right? Medusa. But so like you want her anyways, and then this leadership just gives you another way to like push the advantage. And it's a way to play King Black Bolt if you don't want to use Maximus. So like let's say Maximus doesn't pan out the way I think he will. This is another way to utilize King Black Bolt to its fullest potential. It just makes him so tanky, constantly moving, the power. Like this just unlocks so much stuff. Like this lets Medusa do more of her royal decrees. Like she can be moving people all over the place. Like you get so many rerolls because you're Inhumans, right? You got the built-in rerolls. Yeah. If this was just on Medusa, I think it would be like borderline broken. But since it takes up a tactics card, it's much more reasonable, right? But as we'll see, most of the Inhumans cards are like kind of iffy. Like there's one that only works if you have like civilians as your extract, which you obviously can't play in every game. And then there's another one that is like fine. It gives you like rerolls once per game, but it's kind of like pretty niche. So I think we're gonna have room for this, and there are gonna be games where you bust this out, and it's gonna be really good. So I would keep an eye out for this one. It's just solid. Like you want to go the damage route, right? So you'd be like Medusa, King Black Bolt. I mean, that's 10 threat already, which is a lot. Then you could bring like, Crystal can deal a lot of damage if you want her to. I mean, Lockjaw just lets you get up in there and attack faster. And then you can obviously bring your splashes. You could bring like Baron Zemo, the 3 threat, to give you even more rerolls. He does a ton of damage. Yeah, really good. And I'm glad they gave her leadership because she is definitely a leader of the Inhumans. Like, even when Black Bolt is the king and not getting like trolled by Emma Frost like he was in that comic run, it's like Medusa has a huge impact on what's happening because Black Bolt can't speak, so he tells Medusa what to do with his mental connection with her, and then she may or may not translate that correctly, right? It's like she might tell people what she actually wants to get done. And even in that comic run, she was the leader. Like she was the recognized leader of the Inhumans, and I'm so glad they did this. All right, moving on. Plots within plots. So this is a Maximus card. We don't have the full art here, but it's really cool. I like what's happening. Like you can see Loki, Kang is on there. Holy crap! I just noticed Kang. I would love to have Kang in the game. I know there's all this weird stuff around him right now, but like they could do so much cool stuff with Kang. Captain Marvel is here. Yeah, I really want to see the full art of this. All right. During the power phase, Maximus the Mad can spend 4 power to play this card. It is unaffiliated, so you could do it on any team. Till the next cleanup phase. Once per turn, when an enemy character ends a movement within 2 of an allied character, after the effect is resolved, an allied character not within range 2 of the enemy character may advance short. Okay, so Maximus has to have 4 power in the power phase, which is kind of a tall ask. Like, as we discussed, he has a lot of ways to use his power. Like he gets power from the leadership sometimes and all that. So if you wake up from a daze, this is another way to use that power, and it's probably beneficial to you. But it fits really well, plots within plots, because it's like the enemy moves within range 2 of Maximus, but it pulls in Black Bolt from across the board, right? And then now he's in range. So, like you have to be careful. Like if you want to close in on Maximus, you're gonna summon Black Bolt to punish your team. I think this card is really good. If you plan on playing Maximus a lot, I think it's totally worth it. This is also another way to offset the leadership, right? Because if you move within 2 of Maximus and Crystal moved herself off of a point with the leadership, she can move back on. Like if you're far enough away from the ally, towards them is basically whatever angle you want, if that makes sense. Like the further you are away, the wider the angle, the more control you have over the movement. So, yeah, I think this card is great. 4 power, kind of a lot. If he gets focused down, well, does it remain if he gets KO'd? When an enemy character. No, I don't think it requires Maximus to be on the board. He just plays it, and then it's just like a state-based effect that's happening for the round, right? So, yeah, another great card. Definitely worth trying if you like Maximus, like me. All right, Genetic Prophecy. Inhumans only, reactive. During the power phase, if you have at least 2 fewer VPs than your opponent, an allied Blackagar Boltagon may play this card. So either Black Bolt, King Black Bolt, or a classic Black Bolt. You gain 2 VPs. This round, Black Bolt cannot make attack actions. This, this is a weird card, right? Like I'm not entirely sure what to think of this. My initial instinct is that it's bad, but I'm not sure. Okay. All right, so let me just break down why I think it might not be great. It's this stipulation that you have to be 2 VPs down. And if you're bringing a tactics card to dig you out of a hole rather than push an advantage, that is generally not what you want to be doing. Like you would prefer to get an early lead and use your tactics cards to maintain that lead, not bring you back. Like nobody wants to end up in the hole. Like that's the problem with like the MODOK card that like gets you VPs. It's like you have to be down, or like the DOCOC card, you have to be down on VPs. And it's like that could literally just never come up. And then you're playing a tactics card down. So that's kind of a problem right there. Getting 2 VPs is obviously really, really good. Then there's the second stipulation of Black Bolt can't make attacks. And that is a really big deal. Like if you have a 6 threat with 2 different attacks, something that pumps up an attack, hit and run makes you make an attack, Like, that's 4 things on his card that you now cannot do. So you can basically just move, shake, and use a superpower to move and ally or enemy. And maybe that's enough to win you the game if you were down on points. See, but then there's this weird, like, mental aspect of, like, if you play this in the power phase, it might, like, buy you a turn with Black Bolt. Like, if he's almost dazed, right, it might disincentivize the opponent to finish off Black Bolt because they know he can't make attacks anyways. So it could buy you an extra turn. That might be a stretch, but yeah, I don't see this card seeing play. Like, is it better on the old Black Bolt? See, like, this adds to his attacks. Bodyguard. Like, I guess bodyguarding is still a thing with classic Black Bolt. So then it's like they don't want to attack him anyways because he can't make attacks, but he forces them to attack him. And when he's on his flip side, all you want to be doing is attacking, like with Whisper and stuff like that. So maybe there's like a strategy to purposefully go down on points round 1 and then play this round 2. But then you're missing out on your 5 or 6 threat. Yeah, what a weird card. I also don't know what the art is here. Clearly makes me think Black Bolt has some kind of like destiny or got his powers from a higher entity, which I'm not aware of anything like that, but that's definitely what it looks like. So, yeah, let me know what you think of this card. Really strange. It's one of those ones that confuses me. But yeah, that's all we have for the Inhumans so far. Karnak and Gorgon should be revealed soon. Um, so far, we only know that they're in the Inhumans. There's potential for them to be elsewhere. The old Black Bolt is only in Humans. Is Maximus in the Cabal? Hold on. They updated the timeline document. Oh my god, where is the timeline document? Ah, here we go. 2025, which I didn't talk about this on the channel. Is Maximus in the Cabal? No. He's not in Cabal. I don't think he's anywhere else either. Yep, he's only in Inhumans in the timeline document. That could change in the future, like in the regular game. You know, the timeline. There's been one instance where the timeline did not match the regular game, and that was Killmonger Usurper. Um, like it's worth noting that the Criminal Syndicate is not even in this timeline, so like Maximus could be in Criminal Syndicate. It's a little weird, but we've seen weirder things, right? So, yeah. All right, guys, that's gonna be it for me. Um, I really enjoyed doing this one. Probably be putting out more videos here in the future. So let me know what you thought. Let me know what you want to see, and make sure you subscribe. Let me know that y'all are liking the content. So thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Bye.